John Kaye.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Mr Deputy President, I look at my watch and I see the date. And the date is the 31st of August 1890. And what I just heard speaking in this chamber was none other than Colonel Thomas Cardock Rose Price, known to his friends as Tom Price, who famously gave the order in the maritime strike of August 1890, fire, lay and low the bastards out. And that's what this legislation is. It's about firing low and laying the bastards out. This is class warfare. Let's make no mistake. This is about destroying the capacity of working people to organise. It lurks deep in the hearts of every Liberal and every National, that desire to destroy collective action wherever it occurs, but particularly where it occurs amongst working people. The sheer success of the trade union movement in winning decent wages and conditions for working people offends coalition members. It offends them because it violates their very model of how people should behave. They believe in collective selfishness, individual selfishness. That's what it's about. It's all about individualism. Anything which is done collectively is inherently inferior in the minds of the coalition. The National Party and Liberal Party inherently hate the success of unions. And so when they see something successful, when they see something that actually works, what do they have to do? They have to turn around and destroy it. We saw it in Peter Reith. We saw it in John Gray Gorton. We saw it in John Winston Howard, and we're seeing it in Tony Abbott. And now we said here in New South Wales, in the O'Farrell government, we see a vandalism against the organisations of working people, a desire to destroy them because they know the success of the trade union movement offends their very model of how things work. It shouldn't work. Trade unions should fall apart. The idea that people do things for each other should not work. It's fundamental. I mean, we had the government whip in here quoting the works of Thomas Friedman. Well, what Thomas Friedman said was it can't work. You can't get anything good out of working together. You've got to kick and gouge and make sure that you stomp on your neighbour. That's what their ideology is about. So trade unions, the success of trade unions simply don't work. No, I'm not fighting the class war. You're fighting the class war. The Parliamentary Secretary, the bill you have before this House is about destroying work. It's not about upholding the law. This is also, for every coalition MP in this House, this is about career building. Having that union scalp around your belt, that's how you advance through the ranks. Well, that's a good point. I'll take that objection. But then again, Peter Costello is a singular case. You have to admit, even though he had dollar sweets in his back pocket, he never got the top job. But that's more a comment on how incompetent Peter Costello was than on the usual career path in the coalition. The career path of the coalition is go out, wreck a union, and then you're a good old boy with the coalition, and they appoint you. They will promote you. It's a good career move to be seen to be tough on unions, and that the Parliamentary Secretary and the Minister.
Point of order. Government members have sat and listened to this tirade of views with considerable patience. But I would ask you at some point to draw the members' comments back to the leave of the bill. What do you say at this point? No relevance whatsoever to the legislation before the House.
To the point of order, Mr. President, the leave of the bill is with respect to contravention dispute orders and to costs of proceedings just relating to dispute orders. It is quite within the leave of this discussion for me to explore why the government is doing this and what the real motivations are behind it. This is a standard debating tactic. It's a standard mode of debate in this chamber. It's something that the coalition used when they were in opposition, and it's something that we have used, something everybody uses. It's a standard part of debate. The member is simply trying to silence me because I am embarrassing her.
Point
of order. Honourable Linda Volz.
The opposition, from the government whip. From the government whip, the member is within the long title of the bill and should be allowed to proceed forthwith, unless the member would like to get up with more frivolous points of order.
Yeah, to the point of order.
This goes to put the proof of what the coalition are on about. When
when the honourable member in his contribution deals with the policy and the motivations behind and the historical basis for this kind of ideological attack. They don't like having it put in context. They don't like this is a government not wanting their current attack on working rights and conditions put in an historical context, and putting these kinds of generational attacks in historical context is essential.
I hear what you're saying. Look, in terms of point of order, I won't uphold the point of order, but I will ask the Speaker, talking about lollies in someone's back pocket is probably outside the gamut of the leave of the topic. If you could stay in the leave of the bill, that would be fantastic.
I appreciate your ruling, Mr. President, and Mr. Deputy President, and will of course abide by it. The other reason why we're seeing this legislation before the chamber is simply this. This is a government that does not want to have, at any stage, does not want to have the right of unions to, and it was very clearly in their review documents, does not want to have unions expressing any opinions about what happens in their workplace. And I specifically here referring to, for example, nurses talking about the 1-to-4 nurse-to-patient ratio, and teachers objecting to the local schools, local decisions, or as it should be called, local schools, local decisions. Now, I take the interjection of the honourable member, and I will deal with it now because it was precisely the issue that was raised by the Honourable John Ajaka when he spoke to this bill. He spoke about this being about stopping unions contravening orders, and he specifically mentioned the case of local schools, local decisions. He also mentioned the case, Mr. Deputy President. He also mentioned the case of TAFE teachers, when their working conditions were devastated by the Industrial Relations Commission and they defied work orders. So I think it's totally within the leave of this bill, unless the Honourable John Ajaka was outside the leave of the bill, to talk about these matters. Mr. Deputy President, no, I wouldn't, because I thought it was within the leave of the bill. I disagree with what he said, but unlike the government, I respected his right to address the bill in his own way. Mr. Deputy President, the fundamental issue here is the right of working people to withdraw their labour, the right to strike. Now, I note that the government whip mentioned the case of Queensland, and of course, what he didn't say, he talked about the $100,000 fines in Queensland, and of course, what he didn't mention there, which the Honourable Sophie Kotsis did mention, but of course he was shouting too much to hear what she had to say, was in Queensland. There is a fundamental right to strike, not in the law here in New South Wales, but in Queensland there is a fundamental... Was it you? I'm sorry, it was what? I beg your pardon. It was the Honourable Walt Secord. I often confuse them. The Honourable Walt Secord, who identified that in Queensland the $100,000 fine came in a context of a fundamental right to strike. The second issue, of course, is that the $100,000... The Honourable Peter Phelps' $100,000, the equivalent that is one fine, not cumulative, but one single fine. Under the legislation before the chamber at the moment, a two-week dispute order, two-week activity in defiance of a dispute order would attract a fine of $1.65 million. Queensland, $100,000. New South Wales, $1.65 million. 16 times more in New South Wales than in Queensland. So let's be absolutely clear here.
Yes,
the law in Queensland was tough. The law in New South Wales is punitive. The proposed law in New South Wales is simply there to punish unions and to destroy unions. It's nothing about law and order. It is everything about getting their own way, creating yet more imbalance in the playing field and taking away from workers the right to strike. And there is a fundamental right to withdraw your labour, and that right occurs when the employer does something which is completely unconscionable. And certainly in the case of the TAFE teachers, 2 years ago, when they saw that they were expected to work for longer hours, They're expected to work for longer hours and at the same time receive less pay for that work. And when they recognise what that would do to their students in terms of taking away from them the capacity to prepare their lessons, taking away the time they needed to prepare their lessons and to work with students outside lessons, they realised this was a matter of conscience and they had to remove their labour. They had no choice. It was a matter of conscience. What the coalition wants to do is legislate on conscience. Some Liberal party that seeks to use the law to override the right of conscience, the right of people to withdraw their labour when they see something unconscionable happening. Likewise with the local schools, local decisions policy that this government is enforcing onto schools, unions should have, teachers should have the right to withdraw their labour, have every right to withdraw their labour. And I am proud of the public sector teachers in this state who voted overwhelmingly for further industrial action to say no to local schools, local decisions, because they know what that means to their students. They know what that means not only to their students, but also to future generations of students here in New South Wales. They know what that means. They're prepared to stand up. They are prepared to stand up. It is the coalition who is trying to take away their conscience.
No one cares about the state of origin.
It
sounds like the state of origin.
Mr President, and it's not just teachers. It is not just teachers who are prepared to stand up. It is not just teachers who are... Sit down. It's not just teachers who are prepared to stand up, it's also nurses in this state, public sector nurses who are prepared to stand up and say, we will withdraw our labour unless we get the conditions. Clean hospitals in New South Wales, we'll get to that in a minute. Clean hospitals in New South Wales to protect patients from infection spreading, because this government has cut corners on hospital cleaning. And of course, absolutely, of course, this government would not want to take industrial action, because this government would not want to see their failings being highlighted by the industrial action of nurses. Mr Deputy President, there is no question this government not only dislikes unions, it also dislikes the public sector, and it is working its way through every possible mechanism it can find to reduce the capacity of teachers and nurses to organise and to express their consciences through their capacity to withdraw their labour. Mr President, this legislation does not belong in 2012. It belongs back in 1890. It belongs back with people like Tom Price and the union busters of the 1890. Mr President, this Deputy President, this legislation should be defeated.
Hang on.
Order, Minister. It's 1:45.